Maya Chen stared at the piano keys and wished she could be anywhere else in the world. The black and white keys looked back at her like a mouthful of crooked teeth. She had been sitting on this same wooden bench every Tuesday afternoon for 3 years now. 3 long years of scales and simple songs that made her fingers feel clumsy and her brain feel tired. The music room at Jefferson High School smelled like old books and cleaning spray. Posters of famous musicians hung on the walls, their faces looking down at her with what seemed like disappointment. Mozart looked especially unhappy, Maya thought. His white curly hair and fancy clothes made him look like someone who would never understand a regular teenager from Portland, Oregon. Mrs. Rodriguez sat in her usual chair next to the piano. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gray hair that she always wore in a neat bun. Today she wore her favorite blue sweater and a smile that Maya had learned meant trouble. "Maya, dear, I have some exciting news," Mrs. Rodriguez said, her hands folded in her lap. Maya's stomach dropped. In her experience, when adults said they had exciting news, it usually meant more work for her. She kept her eyes on the piano keys and waited. "The spring recital is coming up in 2 months," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "All of my students will be performing." Maya felt her heart start to beat faster. She had been dreading this moment since she started taking lessons. Every year she watched other students perform at the recital. They wore fancy clothes and played complicated pieces while their families clapped and took pictures. Maya had always been grateful that she was not good enough to be included. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I don't think I'm ready," Maya said quietly. "I can barely play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star without making mistakes." Mrs. Rodriguez laughed, but not in a mean way. "Oh, Maya, you're much better than you think. I have the perfect piece for you." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sheet of music. The title at the top read, "Simple Melody in C Major." Maya looked at the notes on the page. They seemed to float around like tiny black bugs. There were not very many of them, which was both good and bad. Good because it meant the song was not too hard. Bad because it meant everyone would hear every single mistake she made. "This piece is beautiful in its simplicity," Mrs. Rodriguez explained. "Sometimes the most powerful music comes from the heart, not from complicated fingerwork." Maya nodded, but she did not really understand what her teacher meant. Music was music. You either played the right notes or you did not. She had never thought about hearts having anything to do with it. "Can I think about it?" Maya asked, even though she knew thinking would not change anything. Her mother had signed her up for piano lessons, and her mother always got her way. "Of course, dear, but remember, this is a wonderful opportunity to share your gift with others." Gift? Maya almost laughed out loud. If playing piano was a gift, it was one she would gladly return to the store. After her lesson, Maya walked to the school parking lot where her mother was waiting in their blue Honda. Jennifer Chen worked as a nurse at the local hospital and still wore her scrubs. She looked tired, like she always did after a long day of taking care of sick people. "How was your lesson?" her mother asked as Maya got into the car. "Fine," Maya said, which was her standard answer for everything. "Just fine? Did you learn anything new?" Maya thought about telling her mother about the recital but decided to wait. Maybe if she practiced really hard she could get good enough that Mrs. Rodriguez would change her mind about making her perform. "We're working on a new song," Maya said instead. Her mother smiled. "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you for sticking with piano. It will look great on your college applications." There it was, the real reason Maya took piano lessons. Not because she loved music or had any special talent, but because it would help her get into college. Everything in Maya's life seemed to be about college these days. Her grades, her activities, her summer plans. Sometimes she felt like she was not living her own life, but preparing for some future life that still felt very far away. At home, Maya sat at the old upright piano in their living room. Her father had bought it from a neighbor who was moving away. It was brown and scratched, and some of the keys stuck when you pressed them. But it worked, and that was all that mattered. Maya put the new sheet music on the piano stand and started to play. The melody was simple, just as Mrs. Rodriguez had said. Her right hand played the tune while her left hand played basic chords. It sounded like something you might hear in an elevator or a doctor's office. Pleasant but forgettable. She played, through the piece several times, counting beats and trying not to hit any wrong notes. Her younger brother David walked by and stopped to listen. "That's pretty," he said. David was 12 and still thought everything his big sister did was interesting. "It's just a simple song," Maya replied, not stopping her practice. "Why do you always say just when you talk about your piano playing?" David asked. "You never say just when you talk about your math homework or your science projects." Maya stopped playing and looked at her brother. She had never noticed that before, but he was right. She did always use the word just when it came to music. "Because it's not important," she said. "Then why do you spend so much time doing it?" Maya did not have a good answer for that question. That night at dinner, Maya finally told her parents about the recital. Her father, who worked as an accountant, looked pleased. "That's great, Maya," he said. "We'll definitely be there to support you." "All the students have to perform," Maya explained. "It's not because I'm especially good or anything." "Don't sell yourself short," her mother said. "Mrs. Rodriguez wouldn't include you if she didn't think you were ready." After dinner, Maya went to her room and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. In 2 months, she would have to sit on a stage in front of strangers and play her simple song. The thought made her feel sick. She had always been the kind of person who preferred to blend into the background. In school, she sat in the middle of the classroom, not too close to the front where teachers might call on her, but not too far back where she might get in trouble. She got good grades, but not so good that anyone noticed. She had a few close friends, but she was not popular. The idea of being on stage with everyone looking at her felt like her worst nightmare. What if she forgot the notes? What if her hands shook so badly she could not play? What if everyone could tell that she did not really belong there? Maya closed her eyes and tried to imagine herself at the recital. She pictured herself walking onto the stage in a dress her mother would surely make her wear. She imagined sitting at a big, shiny piano that was much nicer than the one at home. She could see the audience full of families and friends all waiting for her to play. But when she tried to imagine actually playing the music, her mind went blank. She could not picture herself succeeding. She could only imagine all the ways she might fail. The next few weeks passed quickly, and Maya found herself thinking about the recital more than she wanted to. Every time she sat down to practice, she imagined all the ways things could go wrong. Her fingers would slip off the keys. She would forget the melody halfway through. The piano bench would break and she would fall to the floor. Mrs. Rodriguez seemed to notice that Maya was nervous. During their lessons, she would say encouraging things like, "That sounded lovely, dear," and "You're improving so much." But Maya did not feel like she was improving. She felt like she was getting worse. One Tuesday, Mrs. Rodriguez brought a stack of sheet music to their lesson. "I thought you might like to hear what some of the other students are playing," she said. Maya looked through the papers. The songs had names like Fantasia in D minor and Nocturne for advanced students. The pages were covered with tiny black notes that looked like ants marching across the paper. Some pieces had sharp and flat symbols scattered everywhere. Others had complicated rhythm markings that Maya did not understand. "These look really hard," Maya said. "They are challenging pieces," Mrs. Rodriguez agreed. "But remember, music is not a competition. Your piece is just as valuable as theirs." Maya wanted to believe her teacher, but it was hard. When she looked at her simple melody next to these complicated songs, she felt embarrassed. It was like bringing a crayon drawing to an art museum. "How long have these students been taking lessons?" Maya asked. "Some of them have been playing for 8 or 9 years, Mrs. Rodriguez said. "A few started when they were very young children." Maya had only been playing for 3 years. She felt like she was starting a race after everyone else had already run halfway around the track. At school, Maya started noticing other students who were in the recital. There was Jessica Martinez, who sat 2 seats ahead of her in English class. Maya had heard Jessica play piano during the school talent show last year. Her fingers moved so fast they looked like a blur. Then there was Michael Wong, who was in Maya's chemistry class. His parents owned the music store downtown, and everyone knew he was planning to study music in college. When he talked about piano, he used words Maya had never heard before. Maya felt more nervous every day. She practiced her simple song over and over, but it still sounded basic compared to what she imagined the other students could do. One afternoon, Maya was practicing when her grandmother came to visit. Nai, as Maya called her, was her father's mother. She had moved to America from China when Maya's father was young, and she still spoke with a thick accent. "Play song for Nai," her grandmother said, settling into the old armchair next to the piano. Maya played her recital piece. When she finished, Nai was quiet for a moment. "Very nice," she said finally. "Remind me of song my mother sang to me when I was little girl in China." "Really?" Maya asked. She had never thought about her simple melody reminding anyone of anything. "Yes. Sometimes simple song carry big feelings. Complicated song not always better." Maya thought about what her grandmother said, but she still felt worried about the recital. A week later, Mrs. Rodriguez announced that all the recital students would have a dress rehearsal at the actual theater where the performance would take place. Maya's stomach felt sick when she heard this news. The Riverside Theater was an old building downtown that the city had restored a few years ago. Maya had been there once before to see a play with her family. She remembered red velvet seats and a stage that seemed enormous. On the day of the dress rehearsal, Maya's mother drove her to the theater. Other students and parents were gathering outside the building. Maya recognized some faces from school, but there were also older teenagers and even some adults she had never seen before. "Remember to sit up straight and keep your hands relaxed," her mother said as they walked toward the entrance. Maya nodded, but she was not really listening. She was looking at the other students. Many of them carried large music bags and seemed confident and excited. A few were talking about their pieces, using musical terms that Maya did not understand. Inside the theater, Maya was amazed by how big everything looked. The stage was twice as large as she remembered, and the piano sitting in the center looked like a giant black mountain. Red seats stretched back into the darkness, row after row. Mrs. Rodriguez gathered all her students together near the front of the theater. "This is just a practice run," she explained. "We want everyone to get comfortable with the space and the piano." The students were called up one by one to practice their pieces. Maya watched as Jessica Martinez played something that sounded like music from a movie. Her hands moved across the keys with perfect confidence. When she finished, even the other students clapped. Michael Wong played next. His piece had parts that sounded sad and parts that sounded angry. Maya could tell he was feeling the music, not just playing the notes. His whole body moved with the rhythm. Other students followed. Each performance seemed more impressive than the last. Maya heard music that made her think of dancing, of storms, of fairy tales. She heard melodies that climbed and fell like roller coasters. Then Mrs. Rodriguez called her name. Maya walked slowly to the stage. The piano looked even bigger up close. She sat on the bench and adjusted it to the right height, just like she had practiced. Her hands felt cold and shaky. She began to play her simple melody. In the big theater, her song sounded even smaller than usual. The notes seemed to disappear into the empty space above her head. She could hear every tiny mistake, every hesitation. When she finished, there was polite applause from the other students and parents. Maya stood up and walked quickly back to her seat, her face burning with embarrassment. "That was lovely, Maya," Mrs. Rodriguez said when Maya returned, but Maya could hear something in her teacher's voice that might have been pity. After the dress rehearsal, Maya and her mother walked to their car in silence. Finally, her mother spoke. "You seemed nervous up there," she said. "Everyone else is so much better than me," Maya replied. "Their music sounds like real music. Mine sounds like something a little kid would play." Her mother stopped walking and turned to face Maya. "Honey, you've only been playing for 3 years. Those other students have been practicing much longer. Then, why am I in the same recital as them? Why did Mrs. Rodriguez make me do this?" Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Maybe because she sees something in you that you don't see in yourself." That night, Maya lay in bed thinking about the dress rehearsal. She kept remembering how small her music had sounded in the big theater. She thought about Jessica's confident performance and Michael's emotional playing. She wondered if anyone in the audience would even notice when she played her simple song. Maya got up and went to the piano in the living room. The house was dark and quiet. Her family was asleep. She sat down and played her recital piece very softly, trying not to wake anyone. In the darkness, with no one listening, her simple melody sounded different. It sounded peaceful, like a lullaby. Maya thought about what her grandmother had said, about simple songs carrying big feelings. Maybe Nai was right. Maybe there was something special about simple music that Maya did not understand yet. But as she climbed back into bed, Maya still felt the weight of the coming performance pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. In just 1 week, she would have to sit on that big stage and play her simple song in front of all those people. The thought made her want to hide under her covers and never come out. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine playing confidently, like Jessica and Michael. She tried to picture herself walking onto the stage without feeling scared, but no matter how hard she tried, she could not make the fear go away. The recital was coming whether she was ready or not. The morning of the recital arrived gray and drizzly, which matched exactly how Maya felt inside. She woke up with butterflies dancing in her stomach and a tight feeling in her chest. Today was the day she had been dreading for 2 months. Maya's mother had laid out a navy blue dress on her chair the night before. It was the dress Maya had worn to her cousin's wedding last summer. She looked at it now and wished she could put on her regular jeans and t-shirt instead. The dress meant this, was serious. The dress meant people would be watching her. At breakfast, Maya could barely eat her cereal. The milk tasted sour and the flakes felt like cardboard in her mouth. Her younger brother David chatted about his soccer game while their father read the news on his phone. Everything seemed normal for everyone except Maya. "Are you feeling okay, sweetheart?" her mother asked, noticing Maya's untouched bowl. "Just nervous," Maya admitted. "That's completely normal," her father said, looking up from his phone. "I still get nervous before big presentations at work. The trick is to remember that everyone wants you to succeed." Maya nodded, but she was not sure if that made her feel better or worse. What if she let down all those people who wanted her to succeed? The recital was scheduled for 7 o'clock that evening. Maya spent the day trying to practice, but her fingers felt stiff and clumsy. Every time she made a mistake, she would start over from the beginning. By afternoon, she had played her simple song so many times that it started to sound like meaningless noise. "Maybe you should take a break," her mother suggested. "Sometimes practicing too much can make things worse." Maya knew her mother was probably right, but she could not stop herself. She felt like if she practiced enough, she might finally feel ready. But no matter how many times she played the song, she still felt unprepared. At 5 o'clock, Maya took a shower and put on the navy blue dress. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. The dress made her look older and more serious. Her black hair was neat and shiny. She looked like someone who might actually belong on a concert stage. But inside, she still felt like the same scared Maya. The family arrived at the Riverside Theater at 6:30. Cars were already filling the parking lot, and people in nice clothes were walking toward the entrance. Maya saw some of her classmates from school with their families. Everyone looked excited and happy. Maya's parents found seats in the 3rd row, close enough to see everything but not so close that Maya would be looking directly at them while she played. Her grandmother, Nai, had come too, wearing her best black jacket and a proud smile. "We'll be cheering for you, honey," her mother said, giving Maya a hug that smelled like perfume and encouragement. Maya joined the other performers backstage. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, wearing a beautiful red dress, and looking calm and organized. She had a clipboard with the order of performances and was checking that everyone was ready. "How are you feeling, Maya?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked when she saw her. "Terrified," Maya answered honestly. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. "Good. That means you care about doing well. Remember, once you start playing, the nerves will fade away. Trust your preparation." Maya looked around at the other students. Jessica Martinez was warming up her fingers by wiggling them in the air. Michael Wong was humming his piece quietly to himself. Everyone seemed to have their own way of getting ready. Maya found a corner where she could practice on a small keyboard that Mrs. Rodriguez had brought. She played through her song one more time, very quietly. Her fingers remembered where to go, which was a relief. At 7 o'clock, the theater lights dimmed, and Mrs. Rodriguez walked onto the stage. Maya could hear the audience settling into their seats, programs rustling, people whispering to each other. "Good evening and welcome to our spring piano recital," Mrs. Rodriguez announced into the microphone. Her voice echoed through the theater. "Tonight you will hear beautiful music performed by talented students who have worked very hard to be here." Maya felt her heart beating so fast, she wondered if people sitting near her could hear it. The first student was called. Maya watched from the side of the stage as a boy she did not know played a piece that sounded like a march. His performance was solid and confident. The audience clapped warmly when he finished. One by one, students walked onto the stage, sat at the grand piano and shared their music. Maya listened to each performance, and with every song she felt smaller and less prepared. Jessica Martinez played her movie-sounding piece perfectly. Her fingers flew across the keys without a single mistake. The audience loved it, clapping loudly and even cheering a little. Michael Wong's emotional piece brought tears to some people's eyes. Maya could see people in the audience leaning forward, completely captured by his music. When he finished, there was a moment of complete silence. Before the applause began, other students played songs that told stories, created pictures, and carried the audience to different places. Maya heard music that sounded like rain, like laughter, like adventure. Each performance seemed more magical than the last. Then Maya heard her name being called. Next, we have Maya Chen playing Simple Melody in C major. Maya's legs felt wobbly as she walked onto the stage. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience, but she could feel hundreds of eyes watching her. The piano looked enormous under the stage lights, black and shiny like a sleeping giant. She sat on the bench and adjusted it carefully, just like she had practiced. Her hands were shaking slightly as she placed them on the keys. In the audience, she could just make out her family in the third row. Her mother gave her an encouraging smile. Nina nodded at her with confidence. Maya looked down at the piano keys. They seemed to blur together for a moment. She took a deep breath and tried to remember everything Mrs. Rodriguez had taught her. Sit up straight. Keep your wrists relaxed. Feel the music. Don't just play the notes. The theater was completely quiet. Maya could hear her own breathing and the soft hum of the air conditioning. Somewhere in the audience, someone coughed quietly. This was it. After 2 months of worry and practice, this was the moment that would decide everything. Maya placed her fingers on the keys and prepared to begin. But just before she played the first note, something strange happened. She looked out at the audience, again, and instead of seeing judges waiting to criticize her, she saw regular people, parents who had come to support their children, grandparents who remembered their own childhood music lessons, young siblings who were probably bored but trying to be good. These were not scary strangers. These were people who understood what it felt like to be nervous, to try something difficult, to hope for the best. Maya felt some of the tightness in her chest begin to loosen. She was still nervous, but the fear was not quite as sharp as it had been a moment before. She took one more breath and began to play. The first note rang out clear and true in the big theater. Maya's simple melody began to fill the space, one note at a time. Her left hand found the basic chords while her right hand carried the tune. As she played, Maya noticed something she had never experienced before. In this big theater, with all these people listening, her simple song did not sound small anymore. It sounded like it belonged here, like it had something important to say. Maya was no longer thinking about making mistakes or comparing herself to the other students. She was just playing her music note by note, measure by measure. And for the first time since she had started taking piano lessons, it actually felt good. As Maya continued playing, something unexpected began to happen. Instead of rushing through the familiar notes like she always did during practice, she found herself slowing down. Not because she was nervous or forgetting the music, but because she was actually listening to what she was playing for the first time. The simple melody that had seemed so basic and boring during her practice sessions suddenly revealed hidden layers. There was a gentle sadness in the minor chords that she had never noticed before. The way the melody climbed up and then fell back down, reminded her of a bird learning to fly. Maya's fingers moved more carefully across the keys. She was no longer just pressing the right notes in the right order. She was having a conversation with the piano, asking it questions and waiting to hear the answers. In the opening measures, Maya heard something that sounded like morning. The notes were soft and careful, like someone waking up and looking out the window to see what kind of day it would be. She let her touch become even gentler, making the piano whisper instead of speak. The audience seemed to sense that something special was happening. The usual small sounds of people shifting in their seats and turning pages in their programs faded away. Even the youngest children in the theater became still and quiet. Maya had been so worried about playing the notes correctly that she had never thought about what the notes meant. But now, sitting on this stage with all these people listening, the music began to tell her a story. The middle section of her piece had always been just more notes to get through. But tonight, Maya heard it differently. The melody became more confident here, like someone who had been walking carefully and now decided to dance instead. Her right hand played with a little more energy, while her left hand provided a steady, comforting rhythm. Maya thought about all the hours she had spent practicing this song, all the time she had played it while thinking about homework or what to have for dinner, or whether her friends would like her new haircut. She had been present in body, but not in spirit. Tonight was different. Tonight, she was completely here, completely focused on this moment and this music. She remembered something Mrs. Rodriguez had said during one of their lessons. Music is not about perfection. It is about communication. Maya had not understood what that meant at the time. She thought music was exactly about perfection, about playing every note exactly right. But now she began to understand. The music was not just sounds coming from a piano. It was Maya sharing something of herself with everyone in the theater. It was like writing a letter or telling a story, except she was using melody and rhythm instead of words. Maya's simple song continued, and she found herself making small choices that she had never made before. She held one note a little longer, because it sounded like a question waiting for an answer. She played another note more softly because it felt fragile and precious. These were not written on the sheet music. Mrs. Rodriguez had never told her to play these notes differently. Maya was discovering these choices on her own, in real time as the music unfolded. In the audience, Maya's grandmother, Nai, closed her eyes and smiled. The melody really did remind her of the songs her own mother had sung to her as a child in China. Simple songs that had carried love and comfort across oceans and decades. Maya's parents looked at each other with surprise. They had heard their daughter practice this piece dozens of times at home. But this performance was completely different. This Maya was someone they were meeting for the first time. Other people in the audience were having their own experiences with Maya's music. A tired father who had worked late and almost missed the recital found himself relaxing for the first time all day. An elderly woman remembered learning piano as a young girl, and the teacher who had been patient with her mistakes. A teenager who usually listened only to pop music discovered that classical melodies could be beautiful too. Maya was not aware of any of this. She was lost in her own musical world, discovering that her simple song had depth and beauty that she had never suspected. Each phrase revealed something new. Each chord progression carried emotions that she had not known were hiding in the notes. The piece moved into its final section, and Maya felt a sense of both sadness and completion. She did not want this experience to end, but she knew it had. The melody began to wind down, like a dancer taking slower and slower steps before finally becoming still. Maya realized that she had been holding her breath without knowing it. As she played the last few measures, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. The music felt like it was breathing too, expanding and contracting with life and feeling. She thought about how scared she had been just 10 minutes ago, how she had wished she could disappear or run away from the theater, how she had been convinced that she did not belong on this stage with these talented students. But now, Maya understood that she did belong here. Not because she could play complicated pieces or perform difficult technical tricks, but because she had something to say through music. Her simple melody was not less valuable than the complex pieces the other students had played. It was just different. Maya had always thought that good music had to be loud or fast or complicated. She had believed that simple meant boring, and that easy meant worthless. But tonight, she learned that simplicity could be its own kind of power. As she approached the final chord, Maya felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for Mrs. Rodriguez, who had somehow known that Maya was ready for this challenge even when Maya herself did not believe it. Gratitude for her parents, who had encouraged her to stick with piano lessons even when she wanted to quit. Gratitude for this old theater and this beautiful piano and this moment of discovery. Maya played the last chord and let it ring in the air for a long moment before lifting her hands from the keys. The sound seemed to hang in the theater like a question mark, and then slowly faded into silence. For a few seconds, no one moved. Maya sat perfectly still at the piano, her hands still shaped as if she were holding the final chord. The audience seemed to be holding its breath, as if they were afraid that moving or making noise might break the spell that Maya had woven. Maya had found her voice. She had discovered that she was not just a student going through the motions of learning piano. She was a musician with something unique to offer. Her simple song had become a bridge between her heart and the hearts of everyone listening. The silence stretched on, full of meaning and connection. Maya had never experienced anything like this before. She felt like she had just spoken in a new language, and somehow, amazingly, everyone had understood exactly what she was trying to say. As Maya continued to play, she became aware that something magical was happening in the theater. The feeling was so subtle at first that she almost missed it, like the moment when you first notice that winter is becoming spring. The usual sounds of a live audience had completely disappeared. No one was coughing or shifting in their seats. No programs were rustling. Even the smallest children had stopped fidgeting. It was as if the entire theater was holding its breath, afraid to break whatever spell Maya's music was casting. Maya had worried for months that her simple song would sound boring compared to the complex pieces the other students had played. But now she realized that what she had seen as a weakness was actually her greatest strength. Without complicated technical passages to hide behind, every single note had to matter. Every pause, every chord, every gentle movement of her fingers had to carry meaning. And somehow, without planning it or even understanding how, Maya was making every note count. She thought about the other performances she had heard tonight. They had been impressive and skillful, full of rapid scales and dramatic flourishes. The audience had appreciated them and clapped enthusiastically. But this felt different. This felt like something deeper was happening. Maya's music was not trying to impress anyone. It was not showing off or demanding attention. Instead, it was simply sharing something true and honest. It was like the difference between someone giving a loud speech and someone telling you a secret. In the third row, Maya's mother felt tears forming in her eyes. She had heard her daughter practice this piece so many times that she knew every note by heart. But tonight it was as if Maya was playing an entirely different song. The same notes, the same rhythm, but filled with a warmth and sincerity that had never been there before. Jennifer Chen thought about all the times she had reminded Maya to practice, all the Tuesday afternoon drives to piano lessons, all the money spent on sheet music and recital dresses. She had done these things because she believed music would be good for Maya's college applications and her personal development. She had never imagined that her daughter would discover something this beautiful inside herself. Next to her, Maya's father was equally amazed. Robert Chen was a practical man who dealt with numbers and budgets all day. He had supported Maya's piano lessons because his wife thought they were important, but he had never really understood what music was supposed to accomplish. Tonight, listening to his daughter play, he finally got it. Music was not about the notes on the page or the technical skills required to play them. Music was about taking the feelings inside your heart and somehow making them audible to other people. Maya was doing something he had never seen her do before. She was being completely, authentically herself in front of a room full of strangers. Maya's grandmother Nai Nai sat with her eyes closed, transported back to her childhood in a small village in China. Her own mother had sung simple melodies while she worked in their tiny kitchen, songs that had no names but carried all the love and hope of a mother's heart. Maya's playing had that same quality of gentle honesty. Throughout the theater, other people were having their own profound experiences. An elderly man in the front row named Mr. Patterson had been coming to student recitals for 15 years, ever since his wife started volunteering as an usher. He had heard hundreds of young pianists play everything from Bach to contemporary pieces, but he had never heard anything quite like this. Maya's music reminded him of sitting by his wife's bedside during her final illness, when words had become inadequate and only the simplest gestures of love mattered. The melody spoke of quiet courage, of finding beauty in ordinary moments, of the strength it takes to be gentle in a harsh world. A young mother named Sarah was holding her 4-year-old daughter Emma, who had been restless during most of the recital. But when Maya began playing, Emma became completely still and quiet. Sarah could feel her daughter's breathing slow and deepen, as if the music was helping her find peace. Sarah thought about how difficult it had been to get Emma to calm down for bed lately, how the little girl seemed anxious about starting kindergarten next month. Somehow this teenage girl's simple piano music was accomplishing what lullabies and bedtime stories had failed to do. Even the other student performers, waiting backstage for their turn to play, had stopped their usual nervous chatter. Jessica Martinez, who had played her complex piece flawlessly earlier in the evening, found herself listening with growing amazement. She had always believed that good music meant difficult music, that audiences were impressed only by technical virtuosity. But listening to Maya play, Jessica realized she had been wrong. Maya was creating something that none of the technically challenging pieces had achieved. She was creating a moment of pure connection between the performer and everyone listening. Michael Wong, who had moved the audience with his emotional interpretation of a classical piece, understood immediately what Maya was accomplishing. He had studied music theory and performance technique for years, but Maya was demonstrating something that could not be taught from a textbook. She was showing what happened when technique served expression rather than the other way around. Maya herself was beginning to understand that something extraordinary was taking place. She could feel the attention of the audience in a way she had never experienced before. It was not the polite attention people give when they are trying to be supportive. It was the deep, focused attention people give when they are witnessing something genuinely moving. The feeling was both thrilling and humbling. Maya had spent months worrying that she was not good enough to perform with the other students. Now she realized that being good enough was not the point. The point was to be honest enough, brave enough, present enough to let the music speak through her. As she moved into the final section of her piece, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude washing over her. Gratitude for this moment, for this audience, for this chance to discover that she had something valuable to offer the world. She thought about all the times she had said just when talking about her piano playing. Just a simple song. Just basic chords. Just something she did because her mother made her. Tonight she was learning that there was no just about any of it. Music was one of the most powerful forms of human communication, and she was being trusted to participate in that ancient conversation. The realization filled her with a sense of responsibility and wonder. Maya played the final phrases of her melody with a tenderness that seemed to embrace everyone in the theater. She was no longer the scared girl who had walked onto the stage 15 minutes ago. She was a young artist who had just discovered her own voice and found the courage to use it. The magic in the theater continued to build, creating a shared experience that no one present would ever forget. Maya's simple song had become a gift to everyone listening, and in receiving that gift, they were giving her something precious in return. The knowledge that she belonged exactly where she was. Halfway through her performance, Maya experienced something she had never felt before in her 3 years of piano lessons. She was no longer playing for the audience in the way she had always imagined performing would work. She was not trying to impress them or prove that she deserved to be on the stage. Instead, she felt like she was sharing something precious with friends. The boundary between performer and audience seemed to dissolve. Maya's simple melody became a conversation that everyone in the theater was part of, even though they were not making any sound. She could sense their emotional responses as clearly as if they were speaking to her. In the front row, an elderly man named Harold Thompson sat with his eyes closed. Harold was 83 years old and had been married to his wife Rose for 58 years. Rose had passed away just 6 months ago, and Harold was still learning how to live in a world without her. Maya's gentle melody reminded Harold of the way Rose used to hum while she cooked dinner. Rose had never been a trained musician, but she had filled their home with simple, loving sounds for nearly 6 decades. As Maya played, Harold felt his wife's presence so strongly that he almost turned to look for her in the seat beside him. A tear rolled down Harold's weathered cheek, but it was not entirely sad. Maya's music was helping him remember that love does not disappear when someone dies. It changes form, becomes part of the air you breathe and the songs that move your heart. 3 rows behind Harold, a young mother named Lisa was holding her baby son who had been fussy all evening. 6-month-old Daniel had cried during several of the earlier performances, and Lisa had been worried about disturbing the other audience members. But when Maya began playing, Daniel became completely still and quiet. Lisa looked down at her son's face and saw that his eyes were wide and peaceful. His tiny hands, which had been clenched into fists, slowly relaxed and opened. Maya's music seemed to be speaking directly to something ancient and wise in Daniel's baby soul. Lisa thought about how difficult the past few months had been. Being a new mother was harder than anyone had told her it would be. There were so many moments when she felt lost and overwhelmed, when she wondered if she was doing anything right. But listening to Maya play, Lisa felt a deep sense of calm wash over her. If this teenage girl could find such beauty and meaning in a simple melody, maybe Lisa could find beauty and meaning in the simple moments of motherhood too. Maybe changing diapers and singing lullabies and rocking a crying baby were their own kind of music. Near the back of the theater, a teenage boy named Marcus sat with his grandmother. Marcus was 15 and had been going through a difficult time lately. His parents were getting divorced, his grades were slipping, and he felt angry about most things most of the time. Marcus had not wanted to come to the piano recital. He thought classical music was boring and old-fashioned. He had only agreed to come because his grandmother had asked him to, and she was one of the few adults he still trusted. But as Maya played, something inside Marcus began to soften. The music was not boring at all. It was honest in a way that most of the music he listened to was not. Maya was not trying to be cool or tough or rebellious. She was just being real. Marcus found himself thinking about his own attempts to express his feelings. He wrote angry poetry that he never showed anyone. He drew dark pictures in the margins of his notebooks. He listened to loud music that matched the chaos inside his head. Maya's gentle approach to expression was completely different, but Marcus recognized something familiar in it. She was taking the complicated feelings inside herself and turning them into something that other people could understand and share. She was proving that you did not have to shout to be heard. Throughout the theater, similar moments of recognition and connection were happening. Maya's music was creating a space where people could remember their own capacity for gentleness, their own ability to find meaning in simple things. A high school teacher named Janet Morrison thought about her students, many of whom seemed lost and anxious about their futures. Maya was about the same age as her students, but she was demonstrating something that Janet wished she could teach in her classroom: the courage to be vulnerable, the wisdom to value depth over flash, the understanding that authenticity was more powerful than perfection. An accountant named David Kim, who spent his days dealing with spreadsheets and deadlines, felt something inside himself relaxing for the first time in months. Maya's music reminded him that there was more to life than productivity and efficiency. There was also beauty and grace, and the simple pleasure of listening to someone share their heart through sound. Maya could sense all of this happening, even though she could not see individual faces clearly from the stage. She felt connected to each person in the theater, in a way that had nothing to do with knowing their names or their stories. The music was creating invisible threads between her heart and theirs. This was what Mrs. Rodriguez had meant when she talked about music being communication. Maya had always thought communication meant speaking clearly and being understood. But This was different. This was about sharing feelings that were too deep for words, about creating a moment of unity between strangers. Maya realized that she was not performing for the audience anymore. She was participating with them in something larger than any individual performance. Together, they were creating an experience of beauty and connection that belonged to all of them equally. The simple melody continued to unfold, carrying everyone present on a gentle journey through emotions that felt both personal and universal. Maya's music was reminding people of things they had forgotten, the comfort of being understood, the peace that comes from slowing down, the joy of recognizing beauty in unexpected places. As Maya moved toward the end of her piece, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for this moment of connection. She had always thought that performing meant being separate from the audience, elevated above them on a stage. But she was learning that the most powerful performances created the opposite feeling, a sense that performer and audience were all part of the same human experience. Maya's simple song was proving that music at its best was not about one person showing off for others. It was about all of the people in a room discovering together that they were not alone, that their deepest feelings were shared by others, that beauty and meaning could emerge from the most ordinary circumstances. The connection Maya was creating went far beyond the notes she was playing. She was demonstrating that when someone has the courage to be completely honest and present, it gives everyone else permission to be honest and present too. Her willingness to be vulnerable on stage was creating a space where everyone in the theater could remember their own capacity for openness and wonder. As Maya approached the final measures of her piece, she felt as if she was becoming a completely different person from the scared girl who had walked onto the stage just minutes before. The transformation was happening note by note, breath by breath, as she discovered abilities within herself that she had never known existed. The ending of her simple melody had always felt awkward during practice sessions at home. Maya had usually rushed through the final phrases, eager to finish and move on to other things. But tonight, she found herself slowing down even more, savoring each remaining note like someone enjoying the last bites of a perfect meal. Maya made choices in these final moments that surprised even her. Instead of playing the last few chords exactly as written on the page, she allowed herself to add tiny pauses that had never been there before. These silences were not empty spaces where nothing happened. They were full of meaning, like the pause between a question and its answer. She held one particular note longer than she ever had before, letting its sound ring through the theater until it seemed to touch every corner of the building. The note hung in the air like a bird that had forgotten how to land, beautiful and suspended and full of possibility. Maya discovered that she could control not just when the notes began, but how they faded away. She learned to shape the silence that followed each chord, making it feel expectant or peaceful or mysterious. She was not just playing music anymore. She was sculpting time and space with sound. In the audience, people found themselves leaning forward slightly, not wanting to miss any part of this extraordinary ending. They could sense that something special was concluding, and they wanted to experience every moment of it fully. Maya's mother, Jennifer, felt as if she was watching her daughter grow up in real time. The girl who had complained about piano practice and worried about not being good enough was revealing herself to be an artist with deep sensitivity and natural instinct. Jennifer realized that all those Tuesday afternoon lessons had been leading to this moment of discovery. Maya's father, Robert, was thinking about talent and how it reveals itself. He had always assumed that talented people knew they were talented from an early age. But watching Maya, he understood that sometimes talent was like a seed that needed exactly the right conditions to sprout. The seed had been there all along, waiting for the right combination of courage, opportunity, and readiness to grow. Maya's grandmother, Nai, was remembering her own journey from China to America as a young woman. She thought about how scary it had been to leave everything familiar behind and trust that she could build a new life in a foreign place. Maya's performance reminded her that the most important journeys often begin with a single brave step into the unknown. As Maya played the final chord progression, she made another spontaneous choice that surprised her. Instead of ending with the strong, definitive chord that was written in the music, she decided to finish more gently. She wanted the song to fade away like a whisper, rather than stop like a door closing. Maya played the very last chord so softly that it seemed to merge with the natural sounds of the theater, the quiet hum of the heating system, the distant traffic outside, the collective breathing of 200 people. The music did not end so much as it transformed, becoming part of the larger symphony of life happening all around them. When Maya finally lifted her hands from the keys, the silence that followed was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was not the empty silence of a room where nothing was happening. It was the full, rich silence of a room where something profound had just taken place, and everyone was still absorbing its meaning. Maya sat perfectly still at the piano, her hands resting in her lap, her heart beating with a rhythm that felt both excited and peaceful. She looked out at the audience and saw faces that seemed different from the ones she had seen when she first walked onto the stage. People looked more open somehow, more present, more connected to each other and to themselves. The silence stretched on for what felt like a long time but was probably only a few seconds. Maya used those moments to realize that she had just accomplished something she had never thought possible. She had taken her deepest self and shared it with a room full of strangers, and instead of rejecting her or judging her, they had received her gift with gratitude and respect. Maya understood now why Mrs. Rodriguez had chosen her to perform in the recital. It was not because she could play complicated pieces or perform difficult technical tricks. It was because she had something authentic and meaningful to share, and the courage to share it honestly. Maya had always thought that being simple meant being less valuable, but tonight she learned that simplicity could be its own form of sophistication. Complexity was often just a way of hiding, of showing off technical skills instead of revealing true feelings. Simplicity required a different kind of bravery, the bravery to stand naked before the world with nothing but your honest heart. As Maya sat in the profound silence that followed her performance, she felt a deep sense of completion. Not just because the song was finished, but because she had finished becoming someone new. The girl who had been afraid of being seen had transformed into a young woman who understood the power and responsibility of being truly present. Maya had learned that the most important performances were not about impressing people or proving how talented you were. They were about creating moments of genuine human connection, about reminding people of their capacity for beauty and wonder, about offering something real in a world that often felt artificial and superficial. The silence continued, full of reverence and appreciation. Maya could feel the audience taking time to absorb what they had just experienced. She was no longer separate from them, elevated on a stage above their ordinary lives. Through her music, she had shown them that the ordinary could become extraordinary when it was approached with enough honesty and care. Maya had discovered her own voice, and in doing so, she had given everyone in the theater permission to remember their own voices too. Her willingness to be vulnerable had created a space where vulnerability was not only safe but valuable. Her courage to share her simple truth had reminded everyone present that they too had simple truths worth sharing. As the silence finally began to shift toward applause, Maya felt ready to receive whatever came next. She had given everything she had to offer, and she had learned that when you offer your authentic self to the world responds with unexpected generosity and love. The applause that finally came was unlike anything Maya had ever heard before. It did not start suddenly like applause usually does. Instead, it began slowly, almost hesitantly, as if the audience was reluctant to break the spell that Maya's music had created. One person started clapping, then another, until the entire theater was filled with warm, sustained applause that seemed to come from a deeper place than politeness or encouragement. This was applause that said, "Thank you, and we understand, and you have given us something precious." Maya stood up from the piano bench and turned to face the audience. For the first time all evening, she was not afraid to look directly at the people who had been listening to her. What she saw in their faces was not judgment or criticism, but appreciation and connection. Her parents were clapping with tears in their eyes. Her grandmother, Nai, was nodding with the kind of smile that comes from profound satisfaction. Throughout the theater, Maya could see people who looked moved, grateful, and somehow more awake than they had been when the evening began. Maya took a bow, but it felt different from the formal bows she had practiced at home. This bow was a genuine expression of gratitude, a way of saying thank you to the audience for receiving her gift so generously. She felt like she was bowing not just as a performer, but as a human being who had just experienced something transformative. As Maya walked off the stage, the applause continued longer than it had for any of the previous performers. People seemed reluctant to let the moment end, as if they knew they had witnessed something special and wanted to honor it properly. Backstage, Maya was immediately surrounded by the other student performers. Jessica Martinez, who had played her complex piece so flawlessly earlier, was the first to reach her. "Maya, that was incredible," Jessica said, and her voice carried a sincerity that surprised them both. "I've never heard anything like that before. You made me understand something about music that I never knew." Michael Wong nodded in agreement. "You showed us what it really means to communicate through music. I've been so focused on technical perfection that I forgot music is supposed to touch people's hearts." Other students gathered around Maya, offering their congratulations and sharing how her performance had affected them. Maya realized that she had not only connected with the audience in the theater seats but also with her fellow musicians. Her willingness to be authentic had inspired them to think differently about their own relationship with music. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared through the crowd of students, her eyes bright with pride and perhaps a few tears. She put her hands on Maya's shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. "Maya, dear, do you understand what you just accomplished out there?" she asked. Maya thought about the question. "I think I finally learned what you've been trying to teach me about music coming from the heart." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. "You learned much more than that. You learned that you are an artist. You discovered that you have something unique and valuable to offer the world. And most importantly, you found the courage to share your true self with others." Maya felt a warmth spreading through her chest as she absorbed her teacher's words. For 3 years, she had thought of herself as someone who was just taking piano lessons because her mother insisted. Tonight, she had discovered that she was actually a musician with her own voice and her own gifts. The recital continued with a few more performances, but Maya barely heard them. She was still processing what had happened to her on that stage. She felt like she had been one person when she walked out there and had become someone completely different by the time she walked back. After the final performer finished and Mrs. Rodriguez gave her closing remarks, the audience began to disperse. Maya rejoined her family, who greeted her with hugs and excited chatter about her performance. "Honey, that was absolutely beautiful," her mother said, holding Maya tightly. "I'm so proud of you for finding the courage to really play from your heart." Her father, who was not usually comfortable with emotional displays, wiped his eyes and said simply, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Nai took Maya's hands in her own weathered ones and spoke in the mix of English and Mandarin that she used when her feelings were too strong for one language alone. "You made music that touches the soul, little one. You understand now what I meant about simple songs carrying big feelings." As the family walked to their car, Maya felt like she was moving through a different world than the one she had entered a few hours earlier. The streetlights looked brighter, the air felt fresher, and she was more aware of the sounds around her. Car doors closing, people talking quietly, footsteps on pavement. Everything seemed more vivid and meaningful. On the drive home, Maya's family talked excitedly about her performance, but Maya was mostly quiet. She was thinking about what would happen next. Would she continue taking piano lessons? Would she want to perform again? How would this experience change the way she thought about music and about herself? By the time they reached home, Maya knew the answers to these questions. She would absolutely continue with piano. But it would be different now. She would not be practicing because she had to, but because she wanted to explore this new relationship with music that she had discovered. That night, Maya sat at the old upright piano in her living room. The house was quiet, and her family had gone to bed. She placed her hands on the familiar keys and played her simple melody one more time. But it was not the same song anymore. Now Maya heard all the layers of meaning that had been hiding in those basic notes. She heard the story of her own growth, the journey from fear to confidence, from obligation to passion, from hiding to sharing. Maya realized that this was not the end of anything, but the beginning of everything. She had spent 3 years learning to play piano. Tonight she had learned to make music. She had discovered that she was not just someone who could press the right keys at the right time, but someone who could touch other people's hearts through sound. As she played in the quiet house, Maya thought about all the other students who might be sitting at their pianos tonight, wondering if they had anything valuable to offer the world. She hoped that her example might inspire them to trust their own voices, to be brave enough to share their authentic selves, to understand that simplicity and honesty were their own forms of mastery. Maya had learned that the most powerful performances were not about showing how much you knew or how skilled you were. They were about showing who you were. Tonight she had shown the world exactly who Maya Chen was, a young woman with a gentle heart, a deep capacity for feeling, and the courage to share her truth through music. When Maya finally closed the piano and went to bed, she felt like she was falling asleep as a completely different person than the one who had woken up that morning. Tomorrow would be the first day of her new life as someone who understood her own worth, someone who knew she had gifts to share, someone who would never again say just when talking about her music. Maya Chen had brought a whole theater to life with her simple song. But more importantly, she had brought herself to life. And that was the greatest performance of all.